Hello, this is Tom again, and I am going into lesson 5, and we're going to be talking about sea turtle feeding adaptations, their ecosystems, and conservation. And it's kind of a longer one, and I hope it's not too long, but this is a really fascinating topic for me, and hopefully it'll be fascinating for you as well. So I think we're going to go to the PowerPoint or slides. Okay, here we are at lesson 5, and we're going to be talking about sea turtle feeding adaptations, ecosystems, and conservation. So let's get started. So, feeding adaptations. What I mean by adaptations, again, are features that allow them to feed on certain prey items. And for a leatherback, it needs features to hold on to slippery jellies. So we're going to be talking, and here is a leatherback in their female in her nesting grounds, but you can see how big they are. They're huge, and we're going to be talking about their feeding adaptations. Loggerheads, they have a big blocky head. You can see that big head that they have. And I'll show you a skull in a second of a loggerhead. But loggerheads, they can crush things with their powerful jaws. And that's pretty impressive. And by basically that is who crushes in Finding Nemo. It's a loggerhead turtle. So green sea turtles, they're called green sea turtles because they eat grasses and algae, and we'll be discussing those. And they have shearing like teeth. I'll show you a green sea turtle skull in a second too. Hawksbill turtles, they are critical to the coral reef environment because they eat sponges, and without hawksbill turtles, sponges would grow over all the corals and kill our coral reefs, smothering them because they need light as well. And then also the olive ridley turtle here. We do have some information on them there, and the Kemp ridley turtle. They're a little bit smaller, and they are the more modern turtles, and they are both sharing some features that the loggerhead has. They're also sharing some features in the throat that the leatherbacks have, and it's really fascinating. So let's keep going. Let's look at this. So leatherbacks, their diet is all jellyfish, medusa, they call them, or jellyfish. They also feed on little tunicates, cone jellies, and when they're post-hatchlings, which means that they're out there and they're still very young, they're feeding on a lot of little salps and little jellies, and they concentrate on that. Once they reach adulthood, they specialize on feeding on big jellies, like the ones behind me again. And so that is very important. And jellies are like 99% water. They're not made salt water, so they not a lot of nutrition there. But we'll talk about why jellies provide a lot of energy and food for the sea turtles with their sticky, stinging tentacles. Okay, okey-doke. And loggerheads, they crush things, and when they're very young, as post-hatchlings, they feed on little jellyfish, copepods, and little hydroids from little kelp and algae. But when they get to be adults, so juveniles and adult, they start feeding on large shells, like conch shells, and they can just crush the crabs, and they'll actually go after different sea pens. So these are some of the differences. Now, the green sea turtle, when it's young, yes, it feeds on all sorts of little copepods and small jellies, but when it's an adult and a juvenile, it starts feeding on grasses, and it focuses on feeding on grasses, and it will actually feed on red algae and different algae. And in fact, green sea turtles are also very important to our coral reefs because they keep the algae populations down so they don't cover and smother all of our corals as well. So all very fascinating. And then the hawksbill turtle, they are the ones that are eating sponges, and they take care of our coral reefs as well. When they're young, they feed on various small sea slugs and copepods, but when they're adults, they really start focusing on different sponges. And sponges come in all shapes and sizes, but they need to keep the sponge populations under control so they don't smother all the corals. Plus, they help with the algae, so the algae doesn't. So they're very important to our ecosystems. Okay, so I think we need to talk to you about the skulls, and we'll go over there and discuss the skulls to you. So I think we need to go out here and go over to the table. So now we're going to be looking at some skulls of sea turtles. And these are not real skulls, but they're plastic copies of real skulls made by Skulls Unlimited. And we have 5 of them. We're missing the flatback. They didn't have a flatback turtle, and they did not have the Kemp Ridley, the smaller turtle. But at least we can look at 5 different species of turtle here. You're going to start looking at each one and analyzing them, looking at the shape and the size and what's going on. This turtle here, we're looking at. I was so surprised to get such a big head from this turtle. Its carapace is probably about that long, but they're made with this big, blocky, heavy head that allows them to sink to the bottom, and then they can go up to a snail and they can just crush it with their powerful jaws. So these turtles will just crush and with those powerful jaws, and it's like a sea otter needs a tool to break open heavy shelled things. These turtles are equipped with this powerful, powerful jaw. And this one, like we talked about before, is the loggerhead turtle. So that's the loggerhead, and we'll put that there. Okay, okay. Let's go on to another one. Okay, this turtle here has got a pretty heavy lower jaw. It looks strong, but it has this bill like a bird, and that allows it to get underneath and feed on all the sponges. They primarily feed on sponges, so we talked about them, and that's the hawksbill turtle. Okay, and this is actually what natural sponges look like, and my sister uses these on her horse because it's a lot nicer for the coat of the horse than our plastic sponges. But sponges come in all shapes and sizes. Big tubular sponge, they're basket sponge. I can put my whole chest, my whole shoulders and chest into a sponge. And these turtles specialize on feeding on sponges. Now, what's interesting about a sponge is to create the structure of a sponge, big tubular type sponges, there are little tiny bricks, but they're made of glass, and they call them spicules to build these structures. And so this turtle, hawksbill, they eat glass. And what a great adaptation to be eating glass, because they have a really hard shell. And that shell protects them from the sharks and their main predators. I mean, think they're taking care of our coral reefs, and they're in our coral reefs, and they need protection. And they have one of the hardest shells of all the hard-shelled turtle. What a great adaptation for defense against sharks, tiger sharks, great white tips, oceanic white tips. All of those are predators to the hawksbill in the coral reef area. Okay, so pretty cool. And we're going to talk about in threats, though, why it might be a drawback to have such a beautiful hard shell. And we'll talk about that in our next lesson. Okay, this turtle I had to talk to the company what all this brown was, but this is just emphasizing the keratin, a fingernail material that builds up their kind of like teeth. They don't have teeth, but you can see this keratin creates kind of shearing teeth. And you can even see a little kind of a molar that fits in there that they can grind. And these turtles feed on grasses. So they feed on our grasses, and they are the green sea turtle, okay? So we've got the green sea turtle here, okay? Each one is unique. They're all have specialized features for feeding on different prey items, but they're all very important to our world's oceans and protecting coral reefs, protecting bays, keeping snail populations down like the big loggerhead turtle and things like that. Okay, these two turtles I'm going to kind of do together. But this turtle here is one of our more modern, smaller turtles. And I'm just going to give this one away. This is the olive ridley turtle. And then this big turtle, which is surprisingly, it has such a big head like a loggerhead, but this is our leatherback sea turtle. And leatherbacks, again, are huge. Leatherbacks from their head, they are all the way back here. They're longer than the screen. They're huge, and they can weigh up to a ton in weight or 2,000 pounds. So some of the features you're going to see between these two species, this is a more modern species, the olive ridley turtle, but it does have a spine, you can see right here, very similar to our leatherback, but they have notches. Those allow them to catch slippery jellies. And but with the loggerhead, they have a really strong jaw that they can kind of crush things. So they're almost like a loggerhead. They've got shared traits because they can actually feed on hermit crabs and different hard-shelled critters, small clams they can crush and eat. So they have a more flexible diet. And this is a good strategy for surviving as well, because if you run out of one prey source, you can switch over to others. Kind of like our sea otters with a lot of different prey items that they have that they feed on. And that's one strategy of surviving in your oceans. Where this turtle also has spines in its mouth and throat, which we'll talk about with the leatherback sea turtle. Okay, the leatherback sea turtle. I could go on and talk about them, but you can definitely see the notches right here. They don't have teeth, remember, but they do have kind of these notches to hold onto the slippery jelly. Underneath, their lower jaw has this point area too that allows them to grasp those jellies and swallow them down. So this lower jaw is very, very flimsy. It's not made for chewing things with its powerful, doesn't have a powerful jaw. It just allows a big mouth opening that they can grab a big jelly, and as soon as they get clamped down on a jelly, there are spines fleshy spines in the mouth and all the way down the throat of a leatherback sea turtle. Olive ridleys also share this, but these turtles are amazing adaptations. All of them have amazing adaptations, but the leatherback, because it feeds on jellies, it has special spines they call papillae, but they're fleshy, and then there's the spine, and I'm going to show you some pictures of this in the next lesson, but they run down all the way down in their throat. And remember this jar, but basically I took a throat section of a poor dead leatherback, and what I did is I cut it down the middle and then opened it up so you could see what was inside. And this is what their throat looks like inside. These, oh, there's a piece of paper there, but see those spines? Those fleshy spines are an adaptation for feeding on jellies. And boy, we're going to be talking, and I'll show you some pictures so you've got a little better perspective of what this monster is about. But you wonder where we get some of our strange alien movies from, with teeth coming out like that. But this is real. This is an adaptation that they had for over 100 million years. They've held on to that feature. But then again, we're going to be talking about the threats. One of them is, you all know, is the plastic pollution, but we'll talk about that next. So hopefully you learned a lot about the skulls and different adaptations. And I want to show you a couple videos of these turtles actually feeding out there in the wild. And this first video is of a hawksbill turtle feeding on sponges. And this is a beautiful video that Sally Bartell took for us. And it's in the Cayman Islands. Again, if you want to be turtle biologists, you get to go to wonderful places. So let's watch this one. So you can see him on the sponges right now. And so with that hawk's bill, it allows them to get underneath coral heads and palms. So very interesting. And look at the purple fans, staghorn corals. Again, this is a beautiful habitat where you see a lot of hawksbill turtle. Okie doke, here is a loggerhead. And remember, we talked about Crush in Finding Nemo being a loggerhead. My friend told me she did not get bitten by that turtle, but look what it does to this tulip in one bite. This crushes the shell. It's not wanting to eat the shell, it's trying to get to the meat of the shell. And this is how they keep the shell population in balance in that ecosystem. Okay. And it's interesting how they're using their flippers kind of to leverage that meat out. You can see a little cleaning wrasses there too. So real fun little short videos to get you an idea. So here is a leatherback sea turtle. And this is my friend Scott, who's been studying leatherbacks for over 30 years in the breeding grounds and mostly in our feeding grounds in California, Monterey, and then they go all the way up to Oregon with aerial surveys. But this is just to give you an example. They took a quick picture around a female that they captured, and there are veterinarians on board. And what they do is they capture them and then put them in the boat. And then what they do is take blood samples, the veterinarian will look in the throat to see if there's any lodged plastic, things like that. And they'll weigh the turtle, take measurements, all of that vital information is taken. And then before they release the turtle, they put a satellite tag on. And this is an older picture. Now they just can use dental epoxy and put a smaller satellite. Our technology's gotten more advanced. And the way the satellite works is the turtle comes up to the surface and that antenna breaks the surface water, and then it sends a signal to a satellite. And from the satellite, it goes back down to a dish, kind of like our dish TVs, but instead of a TV, it's going to a computer. And this is the conservation methods. This is how we can actually see our turtles migrating. They can track them migrating through. They even have turtle races online, which are really fun. And I'll send you some links about that. But these turtles, they want to see, are they going right through heavy fishing area where there are a lot of nets and there's a lot of other things, threats that we'll talk about in lesson 6. And they're also, are they going right through the garbage patch, which we'll talk about as a threat too, plastic. So Scott is a marine ecologist, and he's basically asking a lot of questions, and all of you are scientists already asking questions. That's what's part of a scientist is. And what he asked is like, how many jellies are these turtles feeding on in 1 hour? And he was able to figure out they're feeding on over 100 jellies in an hour. And in fact, over a 24-hour period, they're feeding on almost their body weight of jellies. And so that is really incredible to think about. They're not messing around when they come over to our area. In Monterey Bay during the summer months when we have upwelling, all this nutrient-rich water comes, the krill come in, the whales come in feeding on the krill, and the jelly swarms start happening. And in fact, it's thick. It's like Finding Nemo in when Dory got caught in that jelly swarm. That's how thick of jellies is out there. So Scott answered his question by putting a video camera, which we call a critter cam, on their back. And you have to be very patient with a long pole. You gently slap it down when they're resting and just about to dive. And that will stay on for a period of time. This is the view underwater, so that camera is on their back, on the carapace and back. And this is the head region, and this is the view of the camera looking directly ahead, and you can see it's going after some jellies there. So we are not going to look at a whole hour because, boy, that would take up the whole lesson and program. But we're going to look at 30 seconds, and I want you to count how many jellies this turtle's feeding on in 30 seconds. There's 1. And 2. And maybe 2.5 there. But let me show you something. This is a jelly or a jellyfish, and these are where all the tentacles are. And basically, these tentacles have stinging cells, little nematocysts, and this is what's collecting all the food. Now, when jellies are really big, this is the bell of the jelly, the swimming part. This is like 99% salt water. There's not a lot there. This is where all the food is in the tentacles, and this area is where their mouth is, and they're collecting a lot of food, krill, copepods, phytoplankton, all of that. And what the sea turtle will do is sometimes just go after that. If it's a really big bell, instead of messing around with the bell of the jelly, they'll just feed on the tentacles because that's where all the food is, the protein and food that they need to survive. So pretty cool, pretty cool. Okay, so these are other adaptations, and look at the spines. We saw that in the skulls. You could see those notches. Those are adaptations to feed. And also, sea turtles are amazing. Look at these, they call them papillae, but they're little, actually large spines that go in their mouth and then all the way down their throat. So these fleshy spines, in fact, the needle-like spine at the end is made of keratin, again, a fingernail material. You can see right here, but they are very sharp. I can easily put my hand and fist down the throat of that turtle, but if I tried to pull my arm out, my whole arm would be shredded and scraped up because this is an adaptation for feeding on jellies. And they are specialists in feeding on the jellies. So it's pretty amazing to see this. And you all saw the throat in the jar, but that's what it looks like when they're alive. It's such an amazing adaptation. All of these turtles are like pieces of art. They're masterpieces of nature. And it's just fascinating to me, and hopefully to you guys as well. Okay, I think we're gonna have to go into the next lesson is next. And that is where we'll talk about the threats to sea turtles and why they're endangered and some critically endangered. Okie doke, so see you next time.